Sarah Mitchell was 7 months pregnant, living under a highway overpass in Bakersfield, California, with nothing but a worn blanket and a backpack. She had lost everything: her apartment, her job at the diner, her family's trust. After a series of bad decisions and worse luck, the city moved around her like she didn't exist. People crossed the street to avoid her gaze. One cold November morning, she sat against the concrete pillar, clutching the last piece of bread from a church handout. Her stomach growled. The baby kicked. She raised the bread to her lips, then heard whimpering. A skinny pit bull mix limped toward her, ribs showing through matted fur, one paw bleeding from broken glass. The dog stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on hers, not begging, just waiting. Sarah looked at the bread, looked at the dog, then tore the piece in half and tossed it. The dog ate slowly, carefully, then lay down beside her. She named him Keeper. What Sarah didn't know was that a biker named Wade Ironside Callahan had been watching from across the street. He was stopped at a red light, heading back from a VA hospital visit when he saw the exchange. He sat there, engine idling, until the light cycled twice. That night, Wade made a call. By dawn, 100 motorcycles lined the street outside the overpass. They weren't there to judge. They were there to keep a promise Wade had made to himself years ago, that no one who showed kindness in their darkest hour would be forgotten. This is the story of how one act of grace sparked a chain reaction that would restore a woman's life, unite a brotherhood, and prove that honor still rides on two wheels. The sun hadn't cleared the horizon yet, but Bakersfield was already awake. Trucks rumbled down Highway 58, their headlights cutting through the November mist. Beneath the overpass, Sarah Mitchell sat wrapped in a grey wool blanket that smelled like mildew and gasoline. Her back pressed against the cold concrete pillar. Her hands rested on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, homeless, alone. She had stopped crying weeks ago. Tears didn't change anything. They didn't bring back the apartment she'd lost when the diner closed. They didn't fix the rift with her mother, who'd called her reckless and cut her off. They didn't make the father of her child reappear after he'd walked out the moment she told him. All she had left was survival. If you're watching this story unfold, take a moment to reflect on how quickly life can change, and how one small choice can ripple into something bigger than we ever imagine. Sarah reached into her backpack and pulled out the last piece of bread from yesterday's church handout. White bread, slightly stale, wrapped in a napkin. Her stomach twisted with hunger. The baby kicked hard, as if reminding her they were sharing every meal now. She unwrapped the napkin slowly, almost reverently. This was it. No money, no food stamps left until next week, no friends to call. She raised the bread toward her mouth, then froze, a sound, soft, pitiful, whimpering. Sarah lowered the bread and looked to her right. A dog emerged from the shadows beneath the overpass, thin, shaking, covered in dirt and scars. A pit bull mix, maybe 2 or 3 years old, with one ear torn and a paw bleeding from something sharp. The dog stopped 10 feet away. It didn't bark, didn't growl, just stood there, ribs visible through matted brown fur, eyes locked on Sarah's. Not begging, waiting. Sarah looked at the bread in her hand, looked at the dog, looked at her belly. The smart choice was obvious. She was eating for 2. The dog could find scraps somewhere else. Survival meant prioritizing yourself. But Sarah had spent the last 3 months watching people cross the street to avoid her. She'd felt invisible, disposable, less than human. She tore the bread in half. The dog's ears perked up. Sarah tossed one half toward the animal. It landed in the dirt a few feet away. The dog approached slowly, cautiously, then picked up the bread and chewed it carefully, like it didn't trust the gift. Sarah ate her half in 3 bites. It wasn't enough. It never was. The dog finished eating, then limped closer. It sat down beside her, just outside arm's reach, and lay its head on its paws. Its tail gave one slow wag. "You're a mess," Sarah whispered, "but I guess we both are." She reached out slowly. The dog didn't flinch. She touched its head, gently, carefully, and felt the warmth of another living thing for the first time in months. "I'm going to call you Keeper," she said softly, "because you stayed." Across the street, stopped at a red light, Wade Callahan sat on his Harley-Davidson Softail, black leather vest, grey beard, scars running down his left forearm from a Fallujah firefight in 2004. He'd been heading back from the VA hospital, where he visited burn victims twice a week, guys who'd come home from war and found no one waiting. He'd been about to twist the throttle and ride off when he saw the woman beneath the overpass, saw her pull out the bread, saw her hesitate, then saw her tear it in half and give it to the dog. Wade sat there, engine rumbling, watching the dog lie down beside her. The light turned green, then red again, then green. He didn't move. Finally, a car honked behind him. Wade nodded once, to no one in particular, then rolled forward. But he didn't forget. That night, Wade sat in his garage workshop, phone in hand, staring at a photo on the wall. His daughter, Lily, 12 years old in the picture, holding a stray cat she'd found behind a grocery store. She'd begged him to keep it. He'd said yes. Lily had died at 19. Car accident. Drunk driver. Wade had spent years drowning in rage and whiskey. Then one day, a stranger, an old biker named Hank, had pulled him out of a bar fight and told him something he never forgot. Honor ain't about being perfect. It's about showing up when it matters. Wade picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Brothers from the Iron Covenant MC, veterans, firefighters, mechanics, men and women who understood loyalty. He typed one message: "Need you at dawn. Highway 58 overpass, bring supplies, no questions." Within an hour, 47 people had replied. By morning, there would be 100. The first bike arrived at 5:47 a.m. Wade Callahan stood in the empty parking lot of a shuttered gas station 2 blocks from the overpass, sipping black coffee from a thermos. The sky was still dark, stars fading into pale grey. The air smelled like diesel and cold asphalt. A single headlight cut through the darkness. Then another, then 10 more. The rumble of engines echoed off the buildings like distant thunder. Wade didn't smile, but his chest tightened with something he hadn't felt in years: pride. The first rider to pull up was Marcus Reaper Stone, a former Marine sniper with a prosthetic left leg and a reputation for never backing down. He killed his engine and swung off the bike. "You gonna tell me what this is about, or do I gotta guess?" Marcus asked, pulling off his helmet. "You'll see," Wade said simply. "Good enough for me." More bikes rolled in. Jasmine Blaze Torres, a former Army medic, who now ran a free clinic out of a repurposed RV. Danny Wrench O'Connor, a mechanic who'd survived 3 tours in Iraq and now spent weekends fixing cars for single mothers. Ava Hawk Brennan, a retired firefighter who'd lost her husband on 9/11 and raised 2 kids alone. They didn't ask questions. They trusted Wade. By 6:15 a.m., 93 motorcycles filled the lot. Some riders brought blankets. Others carried bags of food, bottled water, baby supplies. A few had cash in envelopes. Wade climbed onto the bed of his pickup truck and looked out at the crowd. Leather vests, tattoos, scars, grey beards and young faces, veterans and civilians. People who'd lost everything and rebuilt themselves from nothing. "Most of you don't know why you're here," Wade began, his voice rough but steady. "Yesterday I saw a pregnant woman living under that overpass. She had 1 piece of bread. Could have eaten it, should have eaten it, but she gave half to a starving dog instead." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "I don't know her story. Don't know how she got there. But I know this. Anyone who shows kindness when they got nothing left deserves to be remembered." Silence. Then Marcus spoke up. "What do you need us to do?" Wade looked at him. "Show up. That's it. Just show up." Jasmine stepped forward. "I've got prenatal vitamins and medical supplies in my RV. She needs a checkup." Danny raised his hand. "I know a motel owner who owes me a favor. I can get her a room for a month. Maybe 2. Ava added, "I've got connections at a women's shelter. They have job training programs." Wade nodded slowly. Then let's ride. The convoy moved through Bakersfield like a mechanical river. 100 motorcycles, engines synchronized, headlights blazing through the early morning darkness. People on the sidewalks stopped and stared. A few pulled out phones to record. Wade led the pack, his Harley roaring steady and sure. Behind him, the others followed in tight formation, a brotherhood bound not by blood, but by something stronger: honor, loyalty, the refusal to let good people fall through the cracks. From Bakersfield, California, at 6:42 a.m., a convoy that would change one woman's life forever rolled toward a forgotten corner of the city where kindness had been waiting to be answered. Sarah woke to the sound of thunder. No, not thunder. Engines. She sat up quickly, heart pounding, keeper pressed against her side. The dog's ears were pinned back, but it wasn't growling, just alert. The rumble grew louder, closer. Then she saw them. Motorcycles, dozens of them, rolling slowly down the street, headlights cutting through the dawn haze. They didn't speed past like the morning commuters. They slowed, stopped. One by one, the engines cut off. Sarah scrambled to her feet, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Keeper stood beside her, tail low but steady. A man dismounted from the lead bike, tall, bearded, leather vest with patches Sarah didn't recognize. He walked toward her slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Morning," he said, his voice calm. "My name's Wade." Sarah's throat tightened. I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Wade said. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Then why?" She gestured at the army of bikers behind him. Wade stopped a few feet away. "Yesterday I saw you give half your food to that dog. Could have kept it. Most people would have. But you didn't." Sarah blinked, confused. "So? So that mattered," Wade said simply. "And people who do the right thing when no one's watching deserve to be seen." Tears blurred Sarah's vision before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly, angry at herself for breaking down in front of strangers. A woman stepped forward from the group, short hair, kind eyes, medical bag slung over her shoulder. "I'm Jasmine," she said gently. "I'm a medic. Can I check on you and the baby, just to make sure everything's okay?" Sarah's hand went instinctively to her belly. I don't have money for—" "No charge," Jasmine said. "Never is." Another rider approached, a stocky man with grease-stained hands. "Name's Danny. I've got a motel room set up for you. Clean sheets, hot water. It's yours for as long as you need it." Sarah shook her head, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Wade met her eyes. "You showed kindness when you had nothing. That's all I need to know. If this moment moves you, leave a comment below and let us know. Sometimes the smallest acts of grace create the biggest ripples." The motel was nothing fancy, single story, faded blue paint. But to Sarah Mitchell, stepping into room 14 felt like entering a palace. Clean white sheets, a working heater, a bathroom with a shower that had hot water. She stood in the doorway, unable to move, tears streaming down her face. Keeper trotted inside and jumped onto the bed, circling twice before lying down with a satisfied huff. Jasmine set her medical bag on the small table. "Let's get you checked out, okay?" Sarah nodded, still dazed. For the next 20 minutes, Jasmine conducted a thorough prenatal exam, blood pressure, fetal heartbeat, general health assessment. She worked efficiently but gently, explaining everything she was doing. "Baby sounds strong," Jasmine said finally, smiling. "Heartbeat's good. You're dehydrated and underweight, but nothing we can't fix." She pulled out bottles of prenatal vitamins, protein bars, and electrolyte drinks. "Take these. Eat 3 times a day, and I'll check on you every few days." "I can't pay you," Sarah whispered. "Didn't ask you to." A knock at the door. Danny entered carrying 2 grocery bags. "Got you some basics. Canned soup, bread, peanut butter, dog food for your friend there." He set the bags on the counter, then pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Also got you this." Sarah opened it. Cash, $300. "Danny, it's from all of us," he said quickly. "No strings. You need it more than we do." Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. I don't understand. Why me? Danny crouched down so he was at eye level. Because you reminded us why we do this. Most people see someone on the street and look away. You saw a suffering animal and gave up your last meal. That's the kind of person worth fighting for. He stood and headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. You're not alone anymore, Sarah. Remember that. After he left, Sarah sat in silence, Keeper's head resting on her lap. She looked around the room, the clean bed, the stocked fridge, the medical supplies. For the first time in months, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. That night, Wade sat in his garage, phone in hand, reading messages from the group. Marcus. She cried for 10 minutes straight. Good tears. Jasmine. Baby's healthy. Mom needs rest and nutrition. I'll monitor. Danny. Motel's covered for 2 months. Owner cried when I told him the story. Ava. Got her an interview at a daycare center. They're willing to work around her pregnancy. Wade set the phone down and looked at Lily's photo on the wall. We did good today, kiddo, he said softly. We did real good. 3 days later, Trouble arrived wearing a badge. Sarah was sitting outside room 14, Keeper at her feet, eating a sandwich Danny had brought by earlier. The sun was warm. The baby was active. Life felt almost normal. Then a police cruiser pulled into the motel parking lot. Sarah's chest tightened. Old instincts kicked in. Run, hide, disappear. But she had nowhere to go, and she was tired of running. 2 officers stepped out. The older one, mid-50s with a hard jaw, approached her directly. You, Sarah Mitchell? He asked, not unkindly. Yes, sir. I'm Officer Brennan. This is Officer Hayes. We've had some complaints. Sarah's stomach dropped. Complaints? Motel owner says you've been here 3 days without paying. Says some biker gang is covering your room. Brennan's tone sharpened. That true? They're not a gang, Sarah said quickly. They're just people who helped me. No, people don't help strangers for free, Hayes said, his voice colder. What are you doing for them? The implication hit Sarah like a slap. Her face burned. Nothing. They just... I find that hard to believe, Hayes interrupted. You're homeless, pregnant, no job. Suddenly a bunch of bikers roll up and start throwing money around. Sounds like prostitution to me. That's not... Or drugs, Hayes added. You using? Selling? Sarah's hands shook. No, I swear. They just saw me feed a dog and... Feed a dog, Hayes repeated mockingly. Right. Brennan held up a hand. Let's take this downtown. Sort it out properly. I didn't do anything wrong, Sarah's voice cracked. Then you won't mind answering a few questions? Before Sarah could respond, the rumble of motorcycles filled the air. Wade Callahan rolled into the parking lot, flanked by Marcus, Jasmine, and Danny. They parked in a line and dismounted slowly. Hayes tensed. This doesn't concern you. Wade ignored him and walked straight to Sarah. You okay? She nodded, fighting tears. Wade turned to Brennan. What's the problem, officer? No problem, Brennan said carefully. Just doing our job. By accusing a pregnant woman of prostitution, Marcus said, stepping forward. Hayes bristled. What's your tone? Or what? Marcus shot back. You gonna arrest me for asking questions? Enough. Brennan's voice was firm. He looked at Wade. You the one paying for her room? We all are, Wade said. Me and about 99 other people who believe in helping our neighbors. Why? Because she showed kindness when she had nothing. That's reason enough. Hayes scoffed. You expect us to believe. I don't expect anything, Wade interrupted, his voice steady but hard. But I'll tell you this, we're not leaving her alone. She's under our protection now. You got a problem with that? Take it up with the law. But if you're just here to harass a woman who's done nothing wrong, then we're done talking. Brennan studied Wade for a long moment. Then he looked at Sarah. You in any danger, Mum? No, Sarah said quietly. They've been nothing but kind. Brennan nodded slowly. All right, no law against people helping each other. He glanced at Hayes. Let's go. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue, but Brennan was already walking back to the cruiser. As the police car pulled away, Sarah collapsed onto the bench, shaking. Wade sat beside her. "You're safe. They won't bother you again." "Why did they—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Because people like them don't understand people like us," Wade said simply. "But that's their problem, not yours. If you're feeling the tension of this moment, hit that like button, because the story's about to shift into something even bigger." 4 weeks later, at 2:14 a.m., Sarah's water broke. She was asleep in room 14 when the first contraction hit, a sharp, breathtaking pain that ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the sheets, and Keeper jumped off the bed, barking frantically. Sarah fumbled for her phone and dialed the number Jasmine had programmed in, "Call if emergency." Jasmine answered on the second ring. "Sarah, it's happening," Sarah panted. "The baby, I'm 5 minutes away, don't move." Jasmine arrived in 4. She burst through the door with her medical bag, Wade right behind her. "How far apart are the contractions?" Jasmine asked, already pulling on gloves. "Maybe 3 minutes?" "Okay, we need to get you to the hospital, now." Wade was already on his phone. "Danny's bringing the truck, 2 minutes out." But 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Sarah doubled over as another contraction tore through her. She screamed, a raw, primal sound she didn't know she was capable of making. Jasmine knelt beside her. "Breathe, Sarah, in through your nose, out through your mouth. You're doing great." "I can't." "You can. You're stronger than you know." Danny's pickup screeched into the parking lot. Wade scooped Sarah into his arms like she weighed nothing and carried her outside. Keeper followed, whining. "Bring the dog," Wade said over his shoulder. "She'll want him there." The drive to Mercy General Hospital took 8 minutes. Sarah barely remembered it, just pain, and Jasmine's steady voice, and Wade's hand gripping hers. They rushed her into the ER. Nurses swarmed. Machines beeped. Voices overlapped. Then Dr. Elena Ruiz appeared, calm and confident. "We've got you, Sarah. You're in good hands." 3 hours later, at 5:52 a.m., Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. 6 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy lungs, a full head of dark hair. Sarah held her daughter for the first time and wept, not from pain, but from overwhelming, bone-deep relief. "She's perfect," Jasmine whispered, standing beside the bed. Sarah looked up at the faces surrounding her. Jasmine, Wade, Danny, Marcus, Ava, people who'd been strangers a month ago and were now family. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Wade smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "What are you going to name her?" Sarah looked down at the tiny face cradled against her chest. The baby's eyes were closed, her little fists curled tight. "Grace," Sarah said softly. "Her name is Grace." If this moment touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to believe in kindness again. 2 days after Grace was born, Sarah was finally beginning to understand what peace felt like. The hospital room at Mercy General smelled like antiseptic and clean linen. Afternoon sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, casting soft shadows across the pale blue walls. Sarah sat propped up in bed, Grace cradled against her chest, the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb. Keeper lay curled on a blanket in the corner. The nurses had made an exception after Wade explained the dog's importance. Jasmine had just left after checking Grace's vitals. Everything was perfect. Heart rate steady, breathing normal, weight gain on track. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Then Officer Hayes walked in. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just pushed open the door and stepped inside, his presence filling the small room like a cold draft. No partner this time, no Brennan to temper his aggression, just him, alone, with a look on his face that made Sarah's stomach clench. "Congratulations on the baby," Hayes said, his tone flat and devoid of warmth. He glanced at Grace with the clinical detachment of someone checking off a box on a form. Sarah's arms instinctively tightened around her daughter. "What do you want?" Hayes closed the door behind him with a soft click that felt ominous. He pulled a small notepad from his uniform pocket and flipped it open slowly, deliberately. "I've been doing some research on you, Ms. Mitchell. Turns out you're not as innocent as your biker friends think. I haven't done anything wrong." "Really?" Hayes interrupted, his voice sharpening. "Because according to my records, you've got 3 unpaid traffic citations from last year, 2 failure to appears, and a bench warrant issued 6 months ago for missing a court date on a misdemeanor charge." Sarah's breath caught. She remembered those citations. Parking tickets she couldn't afford to pay when she was still working at the diner. Then she'd gotten evicted and lost track of the court date. Everything had spiraled so fast. "I didn't know about the warrant," she said, her voice shaking. "I got evicted and lost all my mail. I would have gone if I'd known." "Ignorance isn't a defense," Hayes said coldly. He pulled handcuffs from his belt and held them up. "I'm taking you in." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "You can't. I just had a baby 2 days ago." "Should have thought of that before you decided to ignore the law." Hayes stepped closer. "Put the baby down." "Please," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She needs me. I'm breastfeeding. She's only 2 days old. Child services will take care of her until you post bail, assuming you can." His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile, which, given your situation, seems unlikely. Panic flooded Sarah's system. Child services. They'd take Grace, put her in foster care. She'd lose her daughter before she'd even had a chance to know her. "No," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "No, you can't do this." The door opened. Wade Callahan stepped inside, his presence solid and grounding. Behind him was a woman Sarah had never seen before. Mid-40s, sharp grey suit, leather briefcase, and an expression that could cut glass. Hayes turned, irritation flashing across his face. "This is official police business. You need to leave." "Officer Hayes," the woman said, her voice cool and professional. She didn't raise it, didn't need to. Authority radiated from her like heat from asphalt. "My name is Rebecca Santos. I'm an attorney, and as of 1 hour ago, I officially represent Ms. Sarah Mitchell. If you're planning to arrest my client, I'll need to see documentation of the warrant you're referencing." Hayes' jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me very much." Rebecca set her briefcase on the small table beside Sarah's bed and opened it with practiced efficiency. She pulled out a manila folder and held it up. "I took the liberty of contacting the district attorney's office this morning. The bench warrant you're referring to, case number 2024 MC 7731, was issued in error due to a clerical mistake. Ms. Mitchell was never properly served notice of her court date because the summons was sent to an address she'd already been evicted from." She pulled out another document. "Furthermore, the original misdemeanor charge, loitering, has been dismissed by Judge Patricia Helms as of 9:47 a.m. today. Given the circumstances surrounding Ms. Mitchell's homelessness at the time, the warrant has been officially vacated." Rebecca handed the papers to Hayes. "So unless you have another legal reason to be in this room threatening a woman who gave birth 48 hours ago, I strongly suggest you leave. Immediately." Hayes stared at the documents, his face reddening. "You people think you can just lawyer your way out of everything." "We think the law should be applied fairly and with compassion," Rebecca interrupted, her voice hardening. "What you're doing right now, intimidating a vulnerable new mother, threatening to separate her from her newborn child over dismissed charges, that's not justice. That's harassment." Wade stepped forward, positioning himself between Hayes and Sarah's bed. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. His presence alone conveyed the message. This ends now. Hayes looked at Wade, then at Rebecca, then back at the papers in his hand. For a long moment nobody moved. The only sound was Grace's soft breathing and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Finally, Hayes shoved the papers back at Rebecca. "This isn't over." "Yes," Rebecca said quietly. "It is." Hayes turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back at Sarah one last time. "You got lucky. Won't last forever." The door slammed shut behind him. Sarah collapsed back against the pillows, her whole body trembling. Grace stirred against her chest, making small mewling sounds. Rebecca pulled a chair over and sat down beside the bed. "He won't be back. I've already filed a formal complaint with his supervisor about his conduct, and I've got friends in the DA's office who'll make sure your record is completely cleared." "I can't afford a lawyer," Sarah whispered, still shaking. "I'm not asking you to pay me." Rebecca's expression softened. "Wade called me yesterday, told me your story, what you've been through, what you did with that last piece of bread." She paused. "My sister was homeless for 3 years, drug addiction, lost custody of her kids. Nobody helped her. By the time I found her, it was too late." Rebecca's voice caught slightly, then steadied. "So when Wade told me about you, about what his crew was doing, I knew I had to help. Consider it pro bono, permanent." She handed Sarah a business card. "Anyone gives you trouble, cops, landlords, bill collectors, doesn't matter. You call me, day or night. I mean that." Sarah took the card with trembling fingers. "Why? Why are all of you doing this?" Wade, who'd been standing silently by the window, finally spoke. "Because you showed us something we needed to remember. That kindness still exists, that people can still choose to do right, even when it costs them everything." He walked over and looked down at Grace, his weathered face softening. "My daughter would have been about your age if she'd lived. She had your heart, always helping strays, feeding hungry people, giving away her lunch money." His voice grew rough. "I couldn't save her, but I can make sure her spirit lives on by helping people like you." Sarah couldn't speak. She just held Grace tighter and nodded, tears streaming down her face. Rebecca stood and gathered her briefcase. "Get some rest. You're safe now. And Sarah?" She paused at the door. "You're not alone. Not anymore." After they left, Sarah sat in the quiet hospital room, staring at Rebecca's business card. The weight of what had almost happened pressed down on her, how close she'd come to losing everything again. But she hadn't lost it. She'd been protected, defended, fought for. For the first time in her life, Sarah understood what it meant to have a family that chose you. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway of her new apartment. A cardboard box of kitchen supplies balanced on her hip, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pride. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom on the second floor of a renovated building in East Bakersfield. The paint was fresh, the floors were clean, and the windows actually locked. Sunlight poured through the living room, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. It wasn't much, but it was hers. "Where do you want this?" Danny grunted, carrying a donated crib through the door. Behind him, Marcus hauled in a rocking chair that Ava had found at an estate sale. "Grace's room," Sarah said, pointing to the smaller bedroom. "Thank you, really. I don't know how to—" "Stop thanking us," Danny interrupted with a grin. "We're tired of hearing it." Sarah laughed, a real laugh, light and unburdened. Keeper trotted inside, tail wagging, and immediately claimed the sunny spot near the window as his territory. Grace, now 6 months old, sat in a portable playpen watching everything with wide, curious eyes. The apartment had come through a housing assistance program that Ava had connected Sarah with, subsidized rent for single mothers transitioning out of homelessness. The application process had been daunting, but Rebecca had helped with the paperwork, and Jasmine had provided character references that made Sarah sound like a saint. Within 3 weeks, Sarah had been approved. Now, watching her friends carry in furniture and boxes, Sarah felt overwhelmed by gratitude. The living room was filling up with donated items: a couch from Marcus's garage, a coffee table Danny had built himself, dishes from Jasmine, curtains from Ava. Nothing matched, but somehow it all fit together perfectly. "Okay, where's the TV going?" Wade called from the doorway, carrying a flat screen that looked brand new. "Wade, that's too much." "It's from all of us," Wade said firmly, cutting off her protest. "You need something to watch at night when the baby's asleep. Non-negotiable." He set it up in the corner while Danny ran cables behind the entertainment center. Within an hour, the apartment had transformed from an empty shell into a home. That evening, after everyone had left, Sarah sat on her new couch with Grace in her lap, Keeper snoring softly on the floor. The TV played quietly in the background, some cooking show she wasn't really watching. She was too busy looking around, taking inventory of everything that had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been sleeping under an overpass, hungry and alone, convinced her life was over. Now she had a home, a job, a daughter who was healthy and thriving, friends who showed up without being asked. The job had come through the same daycare center where Ava had connections. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was a grandmother who'd immigrated from Taiwan decades ago and built her business from nothing. She'd taken one look at Sarah's application, which included a note from Rebecca explaining her situation, and hired her on the spot. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Mrs. Chen had said simply. "I got mine. Now it's your turn." The work was hard but fulfilling. Sarah assisted with the toddler room, changing diapers, reading stories, supervising nap time. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough, and the schedule was flexible, allowing her to bring Grace with her until she was old enough for the infant program. Sarah had also enrolled in GED classes at the community college. 3 nights a week, she left Grace with Jasmine and attended classes taught by a retired teacher named Mr. Alvarez, who treated every student like they were capable of brilliance. Math had always been Sarah's weak spot, so Danny started showing up on Tuesday nights to tutor her. He'd pull out his own GED textbooks. He'd dropped out at 16 to work and had gotten his diploma at 32, and walk her through algebra problems with the patience of a saint. "You're smarter than you think," Danny told her one evening when she was ready to give up on quadratic equations. "You just haven't had anyone believe in you before. That changes now." Ava helped with English, teaching her essay structure and grammar rules. "You've got stories to tell," Ava said during one session. "The world needs to hear them. But first, you need the tools to tell them right." Slowly, week by week, Sarah rebuilt herself. She started a savings account, just $20 at a time, but it grew. She bought Grace new clothes instead of relying entirely on donations. She treated herself to a haircut for the first time in over a year, and barely recognized the woman staring back at her in the mirror. The Iron Covenant bikers remained constant fixtures in her life. Wade stopped by every Sunday morning with groceries. Fresh vegetables, milk, bread, occasionally a rotisserie chicken. He never stayed long, just enough to check in, make sure she and Grace were okay, then ride off with a wave. Marcus fixed her car when it broke down, a beat-up Honda Civic that Sarah had bought for $800 from a guy Danny knew. Marcus replaced the alternator, changed the oil, and refused payment. "You'd do the same for me," he said when Sarah tried to hand him cash. "That's how family works." Jasmine gave Grace her 6-month checkup in Sarah's living room, bringing her medical equipment in a backpack. "Perfect health," Jasmine announced after checking Grace's weight, reflexes, and development milestones. "You're doing an amazing job, Sarah." "I'm terrified every day that I'm screwing it up," Sarah admitted. "That's how you know you're a good mom," Jasmine said with a smile. "Bad parents don't worry." One Sunday afternoon, Sarah found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. No name on it, no return address. Inside was a photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed her sitting under the Highway 58 overpass, back against the concrete pillar, tearing a piece of bread in half. The camera had caught the exact moment she'd tossed half to the starving dog, her face filled with a sadness so deep it was almost unbearable to look at. Sarah didn't remember anyone taking the picture, but there it was. Proof that someone had been watching, that her small act of kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. The note, written in Wade's angular handwriting, read, "You gave when you had nothing. That's the truest measure of a person. We saw you. We'll always see you. You're family now. Wade." Sarah pinned the photograph to her refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Every morning when she made coffee, she looked at it and remembered where she'd been. Not to wallow in the past, but to recognize how far she'd traveled. Grace was thriving. At 6 months, she was laughing, rolling over, reaching for toys with determined little hands. She loved Keeper, who tolerated her grabby fingers with the patience of a saint. She lit up whenever Wade visited, reaching for his beard and giggling when he made funny faces. "She knows good people," Jasmine observed one afternoon while watching Grace crawl toward Wade's boots. "She learned from the best," Sarah said softly, but not everything was easy. Some nights, Sarah still woke up in a panic, convinced she was back under the overpass. She'd bolt upright, heart racing, until she saw Grace sleeping peacefully in her crib and Keeper watching from the doorway. The trauma didn't disappear overnight, but it was getting quieter. One evening in late autumn, Sarah sat on her small balcony while Grace napped inside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Keeper lay at her feet. The world felt still. Her phone buzzed. A text from Danny. "Math test tomorrow. You got this." Another from Ava. "Essay draft looks good. You're improving fast." Another from Jasmine. "Grace's checkup next week. Let me know what works." And finally, one from Wade. "Proud of you, kid. Keep going." Sarah read each message twice, then set the phone down and wiped her eyes. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't forgotten. She was seen, protected, loved, and for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved it. 2 years later, Sarah Mitchell stood in the exact spot where her life had changed, but this time she wasn't the one in need. It was a Saturday morning in late November, the sky overcast and heavy with the promise of rain. The air smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust fumes. Cars rushed past on Highway 58, their drivers oblivious to the small group gathered beneath the overpass. Sarah had returned here every week for the past year, and today she wasn't alone. Grace, now 2.5 years old, toddled beside her, clutching a stuffed dog that Wade had given her for her birthday. Her dark curls bounced with each step, and she hummed a tuneless song to herself. Keeper, greyer now and moving slower, walked at Sarah's other side, his tail wagging steady and sure. Behind them, a convoy of motorcycles lined the street. Wade, Marcus, Danny, Jasmine, Ava, Rebecca, and at least 30 others from the Iron Covenant and their extended network. They came every Saturday now, this ragtag army of mechanics and medics and lawyers and veterans, all united by a single belief: no one gets left behind. Sarah approached a young man sitting against the same concrete pillar where she'd once huddled for warmth. He looked about 19, maybe 20, thin, dirty, a torn jacket pulled tight around his shoulders. His eyes were hollow, the kind of emptiness that came from weeks of hunger and sleepless nights. Sarah crouched down so she was at eye level. "Hey," she said gently. "You hungry?" The young man looked up, startled, like he'd forgotten what it meant for someone to see him. Yeah." Sarah reached into the canvas bag slung over her shoulder and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in foil, a bottle of water, and a thick wool blanket. "Here. There's also a shelter 2 blocks east on Maple Street. They'll give you a bed, hot meals, no questions asked. Tell them Sarah sent you." The young man stared at the items in his hands like they were foreign objects. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Because someone did it for me." She stood and gestured to the others. "If you need medical help, that's Jasmine. She's a medic. If you need legal advice, that's Rebecca. She's a lawyer. And if you just need someone to talk to, any of us will listen. You're not alone, okay?" The young man's eyes filled with tears. He nodded, unable to speak. Sarah squeezed his shoulder once, then moved on to the next person, an older woman with a shopping cart full of belongings, then a teenager with a black eye who flinched when anyone got too close, then a veteran in his 50s who clutched a sign that read, "Will work for food." Each person received the same thing: food, water, blankets, information about resources, and most importantly, dignity. Grace tugged on Sarah's hand. "Mama, why are they sad?" Sarah knelt beside her daughter. "Because sometimes life gets really hard, baby, and people forget they're not alone." "Like you?" "Yeah, like me." Grace looked at the young man with the sandwich. Is he going to be okay? I hope so, Sarah said honestly. But even if things stay hard for a while, at least he knows someone cares. That makes a difference. By mid-morning, they'd distributed 40 meals, 15 blankets, and dozens of resource cards with addresses for shelters, clinics, and job training programs. Jasmine had treated 3 people for minor injuries. Rebecca had taken notes on 2 potential legal cases. Danny had given his phone number to a man whose car had broken down, promising to tow it and fix it for free. Wade stood beside Sarah, watching the scene unfold. "You've built something good here," he said quietly. "We built it," Sarah corrected. "I'd still be under that overpass if you hadn't stopped." "You saved yourself," Wade said. "We just gave you a chance to do it." Sarah shook her head. "No, you saw me when everyone else looked away. That's what saved me." Behind them, Marcus called out, "We've got another one!" A young woman emerged from beneath the overpass, heavily pregnant, her face gaunt and eyes fearful. She couldn't have been more than 22. Sarah's breath caught. It was like looking at herself 2 years ago. She walked over slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Hi, I'm Sarah. What's your name?" The woman hesitated. "Emma." "How far along are you, Emma?" 7 months. Sarah's heart clenched. "Are you eating enough? Do you have somewhere to sleep?" Emma's lip trembled. I lost my apartment, lost my job. I don't have anywhere to go." Sarah looked back at Wade. He was already on his phone. She turned back to Emma. "You do now." Within an hour, Emma was sitting in Jasmine's RV getting a prenatal checkup. Rebecca was making calls to the same housing program that had helped Sarah. Danny was loading Emma's few belongings into his truck. Ava was filling out paperwork for emergency assistance. And Sarah sat beside Emma, holding her hand, telling her the truth that had taken her 2 years to believe. "You're going to be okay, I promise." Emma looked at her with desperate hope. "How do you know?" "Because I was you," Sarah said simply. "And if I made it, so can you." That afternoon, after Emma had been settled into a motel room with food and medical supplies, the group gathered in the parking lot of a diner for lunch. 32 people crammed into booths, laughing and trading stories, the air thick with camaraderie and fried food. Grace sat in a high chair between Sarah and Wade, stealing fries off everyone's plates and giggling when Marcus made faces at her. Keeper lay under the table, accepting offerings of bacon from at least 5 different people. Rebecca raised her coffee cup. "To Sarah for reminding us why we do this." "To Sarah," the group chorused. Sarah felt her face flush. "I didn't do anything special." "You did everything special," Ava interrupted. "You took what we gave you and turned it into something bigger. You didn't just survive, you came back to help others survive. That's legacy, Sarah." Wade nodded. "My daughter used to say that the world changes one person at a time, one act of kindness at a time." His voice grew rough. "You proved her right." Sarah looked around the table at these faces, former strangers who'd become family, people who'd shown up when she had nothing, people who'd believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said quietly. "That's the point," Marcus said with a grin. "None of us can do it alone. That's why we stick together." As the afternoon wore on and the group eventually dispersed, back to their jobs, their families, their lives, Sarah lingered in the parking lot with Wade. "I've been thinking about something," Sarah said. "Yeah? I want to go back to school, finish my GED, then maybe take some social work classes. I want to do this professionally, help people like Emma, like me." Wade smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "You'd be damn good at it." "You think so?" "I know so." He pulled his helmet on. "You've already been doing it for free. Might as well get paid for it." Sarah laughed. "Practical advice from a biker philosopher. That's what I'm here for." Wade kick-started his Harley, the engine rumbling to life. "You keep showing up, Sarah. That's all anyone can do. Just keep showing up." He rode off, the rumble of his engine fading into the distance. Sarah stood there for a long moment, Grace on her hip, Keeper at her side, watching the spot where Wade had disappeared. Then she looked down at her daughter. "You ready to go home, baby?" Grace nodded sleepily, her head resting on Sarah's shoulder. Home. 2 years ago, Sarah didn't have one. Now she had an apartment, a job, a future, and a family she'd chosen, and who'd chosen her. As she buckled Grace into the car seat and Keeper jumped into the back, Sarah thought about that morning under the overpass, the last piece of bread, the choice to share instead of hoard, the moment that had changed everything. She'd given when she had nothing, not because she expected anything in return, but because it was the right thing to do, and the universe had answered with 100 motorcycles and a second chance at life. Sarah started the car and pulled out onto the road, heading home, the afternoon sun breaking through the clouds like a promise. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this story reminded you that kindness still matters, that good people still exist, and that no act of grace is ever wasted, please subscribe, share this video, and carry this message forward. We're stronger together. Always have been. Always will be. Honor rides on, one heart at a time.